I'm Ryan Betson from the Pop Culturist, and this are my first impressions of Resident Evil VII Biohazard. Thanks to our good friends at QVS and Turn Left Distribution, I've been able to spend the better part of a week with Resident Evil VII, which is absolutely great. It's something that I certainly didn't expect. I thought we might get it a couple of days before, but a week before, not a chance. I had not even the slightest thought that we would get that, but that is absolutely amazing. Now, the reason this is our first impressions video rather than a full-blown review is we want to make sure that we get at least some multiple viewpoints on the game. So I've spent the last week with it. Next up, we're going to give it to Josh for a little bit to spend some time with, because we want to make sure that our review discussion, it comes from a different place. So rather than feeling forced to have it out on day one, we want to take some time and think about it. And our review video, there's some production value. We've gone a little bit hard with our review video, so we don't want to give away too much now. We don't want to go into spoilers. But speaking of spoilers, I don't want to spoil any of this game as well. So these first impressions will be as spoiler-free as I can make them. Obviously, I'm not going to give away big plot points or anything, but there may be some slight things that if you want to be completely blind to the game, you might want to switch it off. So Resident Evil VII Biohazard sees you play as Ethan, a man whose girlfriend goes missing for the better part of 3 years, into one day get a little email from her, a little video that says, hey, I lied. I'm not on some cruise thing. I am in some creepy ass house in the middle of nowhere, and don't come find me. So what do? You go and find her. Woo! So you're in this big plantation mansion in the middle of nowhere. And this is where the Baker family live, a sort of weird mix-up of crazy-ass people that are all together in just, it's a family, but not in like a biological sense. It does appear that they may be an amalgamation of just this big mess of people that have come together to be creepy with one another. Speaking of creepy, this is the one thing this game does incredibly well. It is haunting. There is literally, I was playing on my couch, not in VR, just regular. We'll get to VR. Just regularly, just playing it on my TV, and I'm jumping, I'm getting scared, I turn the lights on. There's something about playing a horror game in a first-person perspective that adds this whole other level of just intensity is, I think, the best way to explain it. So there are other games like Outlast, as probably the easiest example, where you are in that first-person mode and you really get that additional tension. But the big difference between, say, Outlast and Resident Evil 7 is Outlast is very passive, in the same way as you're in the world, but you have no discernible weapons, you have no discernible ways of defending yourself. You simply have to run and hide. Now, in this game, you do have to hide, but because you have the options of knives and guns and shotguns and etc., you are compelled to sort of get up in it a little bit as well, which is goddamn fun. When you get into a boss fight, man, this game changes. So when in between boss battles, you wander around you wander around this house, and it's quiet and it's rickety, and I've never known a game to use the power of no sound before. There are moments in this game where it is dead silent, and it works because you're tense. And I'm not saying it's dead quiet, then boom, and there's a big loud bang and you're all scared. It's just, it's silent, and it's messing with your senses, but in a really interesting way. Because you're on edge, and you hear every little subtle noise jumps to your attention. Now, I've been playing this with a surround sound. So, when you're walking down the hallway, boom, there's a little door behind you, and you're like, it's horrifying. This is a game that I certainly played with the lights on for a while. Side note to how this game makes me feel, let's talk about how it looks. This game is actually pretty beautiful. Mind you, I could be a little bit biased. I am playing on a PS4 Pro on a lovely 4K TV. But there might be some upraising that everyone else can sort of see, that I have an advantage there. But one thing this game takes advantage of in terms of future technology is HDR. The HDR in this game is insane. It is so good. Well, especially when you're dealing with a lot of light and dark, like, 'cause, you know, you're walking down hallways and there's just one little light, or, you know, it's a lot of darkness in this game. And rather than just having it be solid black, HDR really allows it to see more of a variance in the shades of black. Rather than just being like, that's a dark room, you can't quite see it. You can sort of see in there a little bit, because like just the lighting is so solid. This isn't spoilers, but when you first walk into the Baker house, like, it is literal darkness. You take a step, and in the same way that your eyes would adjust, the game adjusts as it goes, oh, and there's some shapes, and then slowly becomes a little bit more clear, and then you adjust the dark. Then the door slams behind you just to get the shits up you a little bit. In terms of the characters as well, the characters look pretty solid. Like, when you're in-game and you bump into anyone from the Baker's family, they do look pretty good, and there's no complaints about that either. They are very intense and very frightening characters to deal with. When you're at the start of the game, you see you're sort of a cinematic of your girlfriend Mia talking to you, and like it looks stunning, but it's the same problem I have with most sort of CG or games. Is like the lip sync was just off. Lip sync's a big thing for me, and that's what really sells me on a lot of computer generated images. Like the lip sync was just like, ooh, that off. It sounds like nitpicking, because I'm 100% nitpicking. Like, the game is fucking great. Now, if you play the demos, you're certainly not giving away any of the game. The demos are almost self-contained sections of the game itself. So don't feel like, oh man, I've played I've played the demo X amount of times, I've done this, man, have I spoiled the game for myself? Not at all. Not at all. Because like, the house that's in the beginning hour demo, similar but different. There's some massive changes so even if you've played that beginning hour like I have, I was like, oh man, that wasn't there before, and it actively changes how you play. So it's kind of nice to not have those spoilers, because I really wanted to get into the demo but without spoiling it for myself, and I'm glad that I was able to do that, and it didn't ruin the game, if that's a good way to put it. But in terms of the tone, the game, it's great, but I guess it's more of another little nitpick, but it's just sort of how it came across. The best example that I have for this is the Conjuring movie. So The Conjuring was really good for the first 2 acts of just building suspense and fear and on the edge of your seat. And it all came from things you couldn't see. The Conjuring had James Wan had an incredible way of directing that movie and showing that movie in a way that you sort of filled in the blanks, if that makes sense. It's hard to explain, but the short answer is, at the end of The Conjuring, the mother gets possessed and you see the possession, and it's all big up and supernatural. For me, when I watched that movie, like, those first 2 acts were just solid, really good suspense thriller horror, right? But then once I got to the 3rd act, where you got a bit more of the supernatural stuff, it sort of took it away from me. It kind of bummed me out. Resident Evil 7 did that a little bit as well. Now, obviously, from the demos and just sort of the marking of this game, it does appear to be a very suspense horror game, as it's very, it's like PT, as a PT was very much just walking horror. But there are moments of supernatural in this game. Like, there are some enemies that are clearly sort of like reanimated zombie things, which is to be expected. That's what Resident Evil is. Resident Evil, like, inherently is a zombie game. It always has been. So it's kind of nice in that sense. And I probably should have expected it, but I was more thinking it was going to be a straight sort of suspense horror game rather than sort of a bit supernaturally monstery. But it makes sense, look, because that ties it to the overall Resident Evil lore. So what is Resident Evil 7, right? They're not hiding the fact that this is the 7th installment. It's not a reboot by any stretch of the imagination. So there are things, spoilers, that do link it all together that I won't get to here. I'll let you enjoy those for yourself. And VR. Let's talk about VR. Now, this is the first full AAA game that is playable in VR. Man, the expectations are up here. And does it pay off, or what? When I was talking about how just creepy and intense this game is playing it in first person, you strap that VR headset to your face, you are in this game. You are in the Baker house. It's crazy. It's when you start walking around the house and you start seeing how big and massive this place is. Like, I look at the maps, I'm like, man, this house is way too big for what should be a regular house. Put the VR on and you instantly go, oh, okay, now this house is huge. Like, you're just standing outside looking up, just the scale, like, no, that's a big ass house. Because like when you look at a flat surface, it's like, man, it's like 2 floors, but really? Nah, it's huge. And it just adds to the intensity. There are moments where you might feel a little bit queasy, because when you do bump into some enemies, they feel the need to pick you up and throw you across the room. And that's where you'll get that big kind of moment. But outside of that, it's pretty solid, because most of it is a lot of just walking around and sort of being scared, mostly. But when it comes to boss battles are a little bit different, because the way they've designed these boss battles, they are very claustrophobic, as in you're stuck within this room and you've got to take on this enemy here. That is. And the VR itself adds that extra level of claustrophobia. Because when they do fight you, they get up in your shit. Like, they have no concerns about getting all up in here and doing some horrifying thing. It's so good, but I think I've talked about enough for it now. I think that's enough. I'm gonna let you guys sit on what I've just get that little bit of a taste. Maybe you can go pick up the game yourself, because even without a full review, my first impressions are, I'm thoroughly enjoying this. I'm loving this a lot. And I think if you pick it up and you sort of allow those expectations to be like, okay, so this is a new way of playing Resident Evil, but it's also a little bit of the old, I think you'll really, really enjoy yourself. So yeah, keep an eye out on the YouTube channel, subscribe below, press the little bell thing for when the review does come out in about a week. So there's a lot of work going into this review. So it's not just us sitting at this table talking about things. Like, we're going out, we're doing things, we've got sets, we've got maybe some makeup. Oh, it's looking pretty good. We're really, really excited. But anyway, I'm Ryan Betson. I'm the Pop Culturist. We are the Pop Culturists. And that was my first impression of Resident Evil VII Biohazard.